Lee Cassidy from Tactile Technology. And what I've got today is to talk about security validation. And it might be a term not everyone's familiar with. Well, if we look at why we normally look at checking our infrastructure for safety against cyber attack, we'll be quite commonly using things like penetration testing or pen testing. And that's where this security validation comes from. It's extending that capability into other areas by not only trying to find vulnerability, but also seeing if we can exploit those vulnerabilities. I want to show you a few slides to start with. We're going to skip through them quite quickly, so I'm only going to spend about 20 minutes a day going through some basics. But first of all, let's cover off what security validation is and what it does. So let's first of all think about where you are at the moment. You've got lots of things. You've got your endpoints everywhere, so your desktops and server infrastructure. You've got some kind of controls in place, things like endpoint and network controls using EDR, endpoint detect and response, NDR and XDR, extended detect and response capabilities. And you may have some SIEM, SOAR, and XDR capabilities built in as well, or you may be taking a third party. So your endpoint might be an MDR, so a managed detect and response capability, and you've got a SIEM and SOC being run by a third party for you. So these could be all the combinations depending on the size of your organization. There'll also be other things like ADS, IPS and WAF could be in place, to actually check that perimeter and identify if someone's breached your perimeter. And people are using things like remote access through VPN and other areas. So it can be quite extensive what you've got. And the technologies you've got in place could be quite extensive. Cisco, I've taken Carbon Black, which is from VMware. A lot of things like Checkpoint, Palo Alto, we all know about, but CrowdStrike's becoming very popular. Also things like Sentinel-1, these newer type technologies that are more EDR focused and looking at behavioral patterns rather than just using antivirus mechanisms to actually identify things. So there's quite a lot of these things out there that we're actually looking at. But do we know if they're all working? Do we know if they're, tuned and configured correctly to actually meet the needs of our infrastructure? And that's one of the problems. You can spend a lot of money on technology, but if it's not configured correctly and set up correctly, you may not see the alert. And also the alert may come through, but you may get too many that you get alert fatigue and you don't see the real ones. It's a bit that, the boy who cried wolf. You spend so much time responding to the boy who cried wolf that when it's real, you just ignore it. So few issues there. Also, if you look at the vulnerability centric approach to security, so what we do is we look at all the vulnerabilities we have. It's becoming a bit of a challenge because there are so many. There are over 15,000 published vulnerabilities currently, for key infrastructure. They're split up by different priorities and CVSS scores and things, but only around above 5% are actually exploitable, but actually the number that are being exploited are much lower than that, around about 1% of that. So we could be doing a lot of effort for something that's not going to add real value to our business from a cybersecurity and protection perspective. So let's talk about the platform itself. So there's two parts to what Pentera offers, and we offer this as a solution for you. We implement it and you utilize it yourself, or we can offer it as a service and we run those tests for you. But Surface is the external piece. This is looking externally at your web services, externally at any of your infrastructure to see if we can actually get through from the outside world. More like the traditional pen testing piece. And then you've got Core, which is internal, and this is like an assumed breach scenario. So we're already on the network, so we can actually start using tools that the hacker would do once they're on the network and try and find things. But some of the key things we can do from both is, asset discovery, vulnerability assessment, do some ethical hacking, also provide, advanced reporting so you understand where you are and what can be done. And some of the key things in that, it's actually easy to show your management what you're doing as well and how safe you are using those reports. That's always been a challenge from a cybersecurity perspective. proving the money that you spent and the time and effort you're spending on your cyber is actually coming back with some results. And also there's some surgical remediation, so focusing on key areas so we can actually make sure that those are quite key. But first thing, one, it's going to validate your security and give you some advice on where to focus. Then the other thing it will do is help you look at credential exposure. And credential exposure is two real areas to it. One is how strong are your credentials and with your end users? Are they doing things they shouldn't do to make it easy to remember? Are any of those credentials already exposed and they're out in the wild? So quite critical. About that, especially ones that are still in use. Another thing is ransomware. That's one of the biggest forms of attack these days. Because the ransomware groups can get money quite quickly, like extorting you to get access to your systems and your files. So that's another area we can actually help to give people a good understanding of how ransomware ready they are. To be able to deal with an attack. So lots of other things we've got there. Web apps, VPNs, cloud services, the network itself, and all the different devices on that network, like Apple, Windows, and Linux devices. So if we look at the attack cycle, the first thing is network reconnaissance, and then what we're going to do is work through identifying vulnerabilities, trying to find credentials, cracking passwords, because again, the hackers will do that. They'll use GPUs and specialist software to actually identify passwords. They're going to relay onto different systems. They're going to use malware injection. They're going to gather data. They're going to move across between systems, and they're going to pivot as well by changing the type of attack they're using if it doesn't work. The key to this is privilege escalation, so getting to the highest level. If they can get to administrator level, even better. They've got access to the crown jewels at that point, and then reporting on those tests and cleaning up afterwards, because it's really important if you're going to go through these type of activities that you clean up afterwards. You don't want all these relics of software and things sat out there across your infrastructure, and it's definitely designed safe in mind, so it's safe by design. So traditional tools, vulnerability exploitation comes from the outside. You've got OWASP top 10 does a number of stages in different areas, but what we're doing here is we're going outside in and inside out at the same time to ensure we can actually get a good picture of how vulnerable and where those vulnerabilities can be exploited. So mentioned core, key thing, testing exploitable vulnerabilities, providing remediation on that, so telling you what to do to fix it, different testing scenarios, emulating real attackers' perspective and how they approach an attack. It's also aligned with the MITRE attack framework, so you understand what stage that particular exploit or activity has got through. Also, instant reporting for execs, so you can actually show them where there are issues, and it can be really visible about what you're doing within there. Key thing, agentless, safe by design, and on the surface side of things, very similar. Again, aligned to our top 10 in the way that it does this. Again, safe by design, and it's delivered as a SaaS service, so it's externally delivered. So ransomware, if you consider what ransomware is about, is to try and get onto a system, identify vulnerabilities, and get to the point where you can actually encrypt files. And you want to encrypt them in such a way they can't be recovered. And some of the key things that the hackers will do is, one, look for your insurance documents to find out how much you're insured for your cyber cover, because that's a good figure then to use in the negotiation to ransomware you. If they know that you're covered for £200,000, £500,000, £1 million, they'll ask for that if they've found the cover and they know that you can actually get that paid out by your insurance company, and it's easy for you then to use that cover and do that. So they're going to go down that route. The other thing is they're going to make sure it's not easy for you to recover yourself. So they're going to look for any backup files you've got. So if you use any file-based backup and recovery mechanisms, they'll find those and they'll encrypt those to make sure that you can't just easily recover your systems from backup snapshots that you have. Just making it a little bit more difficult. What we're going to do with this is we're going to emulate a real ransomware campaign. So Maze, Revil, Conti, any of the real ones that are out there that have been used, and they'll follow the same methods, using the same code to actually go through it. Validating effectiveness of it, where it can be picked up and things, and also completely aligned with MITRE, which is a key thing. But the key thing with this, again, is it's safe by design. It's not going to damage any of your production infrastructure, and it's not going to cause any problems, because it's going to pick particular files to copy, and then it's going to encrypt copied files and put them in a specific area so that it doesn't cause any issues for anybody. But it's going to go through the full process of what a hacker would do to actually extort you. So finding a system that's vulnerable, encrypting those files, and getting to the point where it could be extortable. Credential exposure, remember, many things we can think about here. We're looking at one, threat intelligence, understand what's out there, on the deep web, dark web, what's happening. Surface will actually look around your domains and assets and try and find any credentials and validate those. What it'll also do is check those against Active Directory. Most people are using either local or Azure Active Directory, and it will validate those credentials to make sure that they're okay as well. And like I said before, everything's mapped against MITRE, so you're going to see it, in line with the posture that an attacker would take and which stages they're going to go through. A report is created. You can then use this report yourself to actually validate what you're doing, but also, to provide information to your management about where you're spending your time and how you're prioritizing, protecting your systems. So I'm going to give you a quick view of what it actually looks like. So here we are on a testing site. This is core, so it's internal, so it's assumed breach. And we can go in there and we can do a number of things. One, we can do a black box demo. So those not familiar with black box terminology, it means we don't have any credentials. So we're going into the system as if we've got assumed breach, but no credentials at that point in time. Just need to log back in because it looks like it's lost track of me. I've been logged in there a little while. It's nothing like a live demo, is there? So I'm back in there. So again, black box is no credentials. It's going to try and identify credentials from the network. So it's going to sniff on the network, look for user credentials that have been transmitted, even encrypted, hashed passwords and things. Going to find those, find out if it can relay them, and also then see if it can crack them to utilize them itself. You can do a black box with credentials. You can feed it some credentials to give it more of a hand. And you can also do a grey box test. So a grey box test is you've got some low grade credentials that you can feed it as a starting point, and it's going to move on from there. The other thing that we can do is go and look at what one looks like, so you can see it. So we've got a fully completed test here, so we're going to have a look at that. So the actual screen itself is designed to be readable by non-cyber people, so you've got a good understanding of what's happening. On the left-hand side, we've got two things. We've got achievements and we've got vulnerabilities. So we can see from this we've got 39 achievements, and the score goes up to 10. So the higher the number here, the greater the score. So in this case, it's an 8. It's cracked some credentials. So when we go in here, it takes us to what we call the attack map, and the attack map shows us what's happened. So we've started off with a 4.7 vulnerability, and that's allowed us then to capture some credentials. What we can do then is look at if we can crack that password easily, and then it's taken to us this 8 because we've used both of those capabilities to be able to achieve, getting a full password and utilization. We can see other time places where the credentials have been captured. We can look at credentials over HTTP as well. So different ways that things have been captured on there. So I'll go back to the overview. Down here, we've got all of the systems that have been identified. So it's going to go out and enumerate the systems, find out what we've got there. And it's picking up Windows and Linux systems that are on the network, desktops and servers. So we've got some Windows 10 desktops, we've got some Linux servers, and we've got some Windows servers. So it's identified all of those, and then it's going through the process of what it can do with each one of them. We can go to each one of them and see what we've found. So we've got some low-level vulnerabilities found on this particular one, and we can actually identify which these are. So we've got closed ports on the host. Host supports SMB version 1. So this is something that can be utilized by the hacker. We can also see up here the number of vulnerabilities and the number of achievements that have been had. So if we look at this critical vulnerability, so if we go over to our vulnerabilities section, we can see the different vulnerabilities. So here, 7.9 passwords can easily be cracked. So that is a critical one. But actually, number 1 is the host can be forced to authenticate with a rogue server, which is actually more of an issue than actually being able to crack the password. But in here, what we can see is some insight in how it's happening and what's been used to do it, but also what you can do to remediate it. So what you can do quickly to actually fix this problem. So that's really important. That information itself is held internally within the network on the system itself. So you're not going externally to get those to sites you're not sure about. It's stored locally on the actual Pentera platform where you're doing the testing. So it gives you a really good picture of what's happened and how you've got there. And say we've got a list of all the hosts and all details about those hosts. We've also got any users that have been identified and captured. And we've got all the actions that have been taken out. So different types of testing, things like Log4Shell, vulnerabilities, and many others have been worked on during that time. Again, everything's mapped against MITRE, so we can see all of these different pieces and where they are against the MITRE attack framework, so we understand it in line with that. And then what we can do is look at a report. So it generates a report. It's a detailed report, but it starts off with a nice, simple executive summary to say, this is where we are. And it's done in plain English so that your management can understand why you need to spend money or time or effort, and understand why you focus on particular areas to do it. So hopefully that's given you a bit of a picture about what Pentera looks like and what it can do for you. I'm just going to jump back to my presentation again. So if I let's go back to there. I'll bring that back up. So that's hopefully giving you a quick demo so you've got an understanding of what the system can do. So we've gone through that, but then let's look at the return on investment on this. Thinking about all the combinations of attacks and things, and because the system is automated, it's going to speed up the process of doing this. If you're going to do manual penetration testing, it can take quite a lot of time. So normally for a traditional system with about 500 people, you're looking at about 9 days and 2 people to do it. So it can be quite expensive. If you look at it using an automated platform like Pentera, you're looking at reducing that down significantly. So you're looking at one person doing it over 2 days. So a massive reduction in time, but also cost to do it. The other thing is you can do is continue to test. So what we can do is test all of your attack services, your online systems, your internal systems, your cloud services, and we can actually help validate what you've got. asset discovery vulnerability assessment and look at it from a hacker's perspective. We can validate autonomously and using without agents in real time what's actually happening on your system and how your system is exploitable. We can identify those exploits and how to remediate against them, which is really, really key. One thing we can do is a thing called a one-day proof of value or a one-day challenge, we're terming it. So what we can do is agree a bit of a guide on what we want to do and how we want to go about it. We'll put together a quote of what it would cost you if you actually move forward afterwards. Give you a questionnaire to capture some information about what you've got in place at the moment. We'd actually do a scoping call a week before just to make sure we've got all the information about who's going to be involved, what we're looking to prove. And then on the day, we'll come in around about 9 o'clock, sit down, have a quick meeting, get the information, the system set up, and start probing the infrastructure. Around about 2 to 3 hours later, we'll be looking to gather some of the information from that and present that back to you. So quite quickly, we can give you a picture of where you are and what kind of things you need to work on to get your system more secure, giving you a bit more validation of your security. Hopefully that was of interest. Next week, we're going to go into a specific area. I'm going to replay a session we did with Tom Mans, which is specifically about credentials and how we can do that. Following week, we're going to go into ransomware readiness and then reporting. So we're going to cover off key areas that you might want to do. Again, around about 20 minutes at 1:30 each week, so you've got a better picture of it. If you do want to know more about it, I've got some details of my contacts here. So if you want to get my details, they're on Linktree. So https://linktree linktr.ee/Lee Cassidy. And if you want to book a meeting, you can actually use this link to book a meeting. We can actually set up a 15-minute just quick chat just to talk about where you are. 30 to 45 minutes if you want to actually go through the process of seeing and validating whether this will work for you as an organization. The key thing here, though, is it's going to allow you to take control of protecting your own infrastructure, even if you don't have security people within your business. This is going to give you a lot of capabilities without having some of those security people. If you do have security people, it'll allow them to do more in shorter time as well with the automation capabilities. AI and machine learning are going to make a massive impact in what we do around cybersecurity, and this is a starting point, giving us some basic capabilities to be able to validate our security posture, where we are, and how we remediate against it. Thank you very much for joining me today, and hopefully I'll see you soon. And that's me done for today. Thank you very much. Bye.